Set for public hearing on proposed amendments to Granite County subdivision regulations, including changes to the fire safety requirements for Georgetown Lake Fire Service area.
Actually, I changes to amendment.
Amendments, okay.
Yes.
Is that okay with you, Scott?
Amended the fire safety requirements for Georgetown Lake Fire Service area.
Yeah, but my opinion is there any, it says right here. I had a guy call me and he was all worried, and I told him that he should come to the meeting if it's all on here today, but he's.
Yeah,
she's right on schedule.
That's what I was looking for right there.
Why would we think otherwise?
Hi, Linda.
Hey, Linda.
How are you, Fred?
Good, Mike. How about you?
Good.
Good. Better be.
Did you happen to talk to Chuck Hinkle?
Did I talk to Chuck Ingle?
I gave him everything, because he was all worried about this being county-wide, and I said, no, this is it there in the Georgetown Lake Fire.
Yeah, no.
And he didn't
Give
understand.
my number. Not a problem.
Okay, I should have,
Yeah.
they called me at 10 o'clock last night, so I'm not quite sure what I told him. Woke me up and I was
Bit of trivia, we have another fire in the county.
Yeah.
Medicine Lake.
Medicine Lake 2.
I guess that I wanted to kind of be prepared, but I don't know really what I told him. I just
Yeah,
got
I'll
up
cover
and
for
fell
you.
asleep and I don't.
Don't know. Yeah, we'll just talk.
Okay, thanks.
He was down in your end of the valley?
No, he's right here
Oh.
in Peabody. He used to retire from the Forest Service.
Did you see that, Linda?
Ingle.
Okay.
Lives
Chuck
out
Hinkle.
East Fork.
I got a copy.
Nope. Okay.
Going out to East Fork.
Oh, really?
But he was, I didn't really understand what he was saying, and I don't know what I said, so they catch you when you wake up, and I thought it was a record call.
Right.
And I was like, ooh,
Exactly.
I just wanted to be prepared in case he was,
Oh, that's fine.
So Linda, go.
Well, we have the regulations. This is a request from the Georgetown Lake Fire District to just incorporate their regulations into the subdivision regulations.
And all they were amendments to the original.
It'll be an appendix, right, to
Okay.
the subdivision regulations.
That one.
And that will go to, the whole thing will go in as an appendix to the subdivision regulations. So,
I was reading the appendixes. It's a little more complicated than I thought. I struggle. What did the planning board have to say about this?
they said, well, it's, the planning board's always kind of stayed out of the requirements that the fire departments need. The fire department, what you see, that appendix that's attached to this document, that's from DNRC. And at one point, DNRC had requested the counties to adopt that. Our county didn't, at the time, didn't want to adopt it. So, but the Georgetown Lake Fire people would like to adopt it as part of their regulations. So this would only be applicable to the Georgetown Lake people, even the appendix. But yeah, it's very comprehensive,
And new subdivisions in
and
Georgetown.
new subdivisions only would get.
it's just kind of just to make sure that they do what they're supposed to do and not get this big thing that we're in.
Well,
Kind, you know,
It's way more complicated.
look at the volume that we created. Did we want to write it all? So we use this as an appendix.
I got it, but I think more importantly is who has to enforce this on a development?
It'll be a,
Yeah, the county. Yes,
we'll oversee, we'll be guidance for them.
we appreciate that, but we don't have, anybody on the ground to enforce this. And it's complicated. And in an era of mountains of regulations, here's a mountain more. You know, and I'm like, geez Louise, you know? There's an area where personal responsibility. You don't mitigate fire fuel around your house, it burns down, tough shit. You know?
And that's
wake
fine for
up.
that individual.
But
That's
it's
right.
the neighbors that burn it up.
There you go.
Well, and remember, this is only for new subdivisions.
Right.
So it's not gonna get applied to anybody that's existing or has existing.
That's what he was
Parcels.
asking.
Here's what I'd say about, if I could. If you look at how subdivisions are approved and what they have to comply with when they're first done. The problem with fire protection is we've never had anything in there that they have to comply with.
Well, you have, there's things in there.
Well, but
But that's not a fair statement, there is a lot of fire.
okay, there is some things in there,
Right.
but it's not very definitive, and that's the problem. That's why we get into things like we had with Rising Sun. You know, so we went to and said, well, what would we like to see? We'd like to see developments incorporate good fire standards at that time. And that we would look at that, send a letter to the county and say, this development complies and provides the fire protection we need. That's never been in place before. So it's kind of your one shot to get the water you need, the roads you need, the access you need to fight a fire. And if you don't do it at that time, you're never gonna get it. So,
Well, you gotta start somewhere too. And I agree with you. I see where you're going at. I know there's a lot more new regulations than that. If you don't do it the right way, you would have those either.
well, and you start off by saying, what do we need, and you write one paragraph. Well, then you start saying, well, okay, we need more definition in that. The more definition we have, the better the developer can comply with.
Everybody's hands are trying to get in, all these lawyers are trying to get into it. If you don't have everything, it's just like where we're sitting out by the sons, you know. Do you have this, can you prove that you said it, you know? I mean, it's just gotten too much.
That's exactly it.
And with the conditions that we got saddled with Rising Sun, that perpetuated this document to get improved
I
or,
agree with you.
yeah, yeah.
I don't like regulations
No.
either, but if you don't cut yourself or have something down to show and what you have to do, how are you ever gonna
You know what,
move forward?
Bill, I had your feelings when I first proposed this to Kurt 2 years ago. He says, I'd like this thing simply read, as few pages as possible, and yet covering our bases. That was kind of our goal, and I think we were at one point, we had 7 pages. Simple little document. But then we asked input from another member, and being totally independent, looking at what we'd written, he suddenly started looking at the legal description side of it. And suddenly we were layered and layered
Yeah.
to prepare ourselves for that development. My goal was to have it simple, but
Yeah.
simple was what we had years ago, and Rising Sun challenged us.
And did what they wanted.
So what about McLeod's challenge? Did we talk to Blaine about that?
Blaine sent an email out, that essentially said he disagreed with that opinion, that he thought it would be fine, it was covered, under law, and,
In other words, he disagrees with
McLeod's position.
McLeod's position, which is
That it's
actually
an impact.
Jack, the judge over in Wilson Park County. He states the lawsuit was in the county where the judge sided with the developer against the regulations over there.
Right,
That's
because
so,
they're,
but what's he saying? That
well,
that's-
their regulations over there at that time said they had to put in sprinkler systems. That was the big sticker that the judge said, you can't do that, you have to have a building, program, a building permit program, because that's the only person that would be able able
You
to
don't.
check that.
Yeah.
So since they didn't have one, they said you can't make people put in sprinkler systems, which this doesn't have that aspects of it in. There is,
It is one of the options, however.
a sprinkler
Yes, it
system.
is. It's one of the options.
The other thing that, that on this, the impact fees, you know, there is definitely a way to set up impact fees if you're gonna do impact fees for your entire county. The NACO attorneys have always kind of said the fire districts are sort of right there on the blurry edge, but nobody has, there's never been a court case that says you can't do
What I remember about that court case too, one of the, as I remember it, was that you can't require a higher standard than the state does. And by requiring things to be sprinkled, you have a higher standard than the state had. So I guess the good thing about our document is the main document is a state document, an approved document. And so we don't have a higher requirement than the state requires. In some cases, we have a less requirement than the state requires.
Interior fire truck. So it's
So
one or more of the following, and it is at page 19. It's a subdivision that cannot provide minimum two approach routes are prohibited. However, they may be allowed if developers can mitigate the risk by using one or more of the following: larger defensible spaces, fuel breaks, turnouts, increased flows, interior fire extinguishers.
Right.
So
But-
can I ask you a question? So on this, are they at least, I guess it ain't a question, what it is, so they're giving you a whole bunch of ways that you can meet the standards, and that's just
Right.
one.
Well, here's my question.
And
This is
we
how
would
you
not
get
be
into it.
able to use that one.
This is how you get into that. The guy goes, I put interior water sprinkler. We go, well, we can't inspect that. Here we go with more regulation. I mean, you know,
But
that's
it's
what I'm
not-
saying.
But on page 19, that's not a requirement.
No, it's an
It's
option.
an option
Yep.
that they can,
That's what I.
They
An
can-
option, and if they use it, we can't inspect it. She just said that. So so these are pretty complicated.
okay.
I'm wondering if I don't know, I just wanna move slow here, if at all. I'll ask for a motion if you guys wanna make it.
I guess I just have a question. If you just look at the front of their stuff without the wildland interface stuff attached, do you
right.
have issues with that?
No, I do not.
Okay, so it's really the DMRC
Yep.
document you have more
Yep.
issues
That we're
with
adopting as part of the rules.
for
What if
that
we-
area.
Right, so what if we just adopt the first Georgetown Lake Fire Service Area Protection Standards? Most of them are in there already, you're just amending them.
What do you guys feel about that? If
Well,
They-
one issue I have with that is that this document is the first document that we put together, and then we have the appendix, is written around the appendix. You know, so it refers to the appendix, it refers to various parts of the appendix. I would say that if there's, so it'd take a rewrite of the entire document, I believe. I would say if we have issues with something that's in the DMRC, like sprinklers, and you want to remove, let's remove it. We can do that. But
Well, I don't know if I agree with you, 'cause then you,
okay, if you look at,
I mean, then you're gonna go through each, I mean, we could sit, some of us are gonna agree on something, the other one's not, I mean, then we're gonna go through each one, and are we gonna nitpick through the whole thing? And,
That's what it amount to.
I mean, I know, I'm not for a bunch of, you know, can of death, but put someone standards are gonna be,
We fought with these fire protection standards for years. I mean, and somebody always finds some kind of a slippery loophole to,
a lot of it too, Bart, is that it's coming out, you know, fire things have gotten so out of hand that it's, you know, everybody's trying to cover their ass. And I think that's kind of what these guys are trying to do, is just make sure they have something in line so they can actually go to and say, well, you know, right here it says it. And it always says applicant, don't say you have to. You know, at least they have somewhere to start. You see what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
at least you have a guideline, something in front of you.
That bailed us out 10 years ago or more, when the explosive expansion occurred in the 2000s. We had very little to stand on, but an old ZNRC document that had been accepted by the counties.
Crap, and what they state from the, I don't see where it refers to.
Can you,
Or it doesn't refer to,
so if say if you wanted to go,
where do you see where it refers to appendix? I don't see it.
Okay, if you look at page 1, and we, under purpose,
Yep,
these standards,
have been adopted a variety of options to consider zoning.
right?
Where does it say the appendix?
So, and then if you look under use,
Appendix 2, yeah, under use.
the document's intended to clarify and elaborate.
Yeah, I know where appendix is.
Okay.
I'm just looking for where it refer, okay, it does say.
So if you look at section 1, 4A, 4 and B, that comes right out of the appendix. Those are the sections we're referring to when we're referencing things here for draft sites and dry hydrants.
so are you, so you're saying that, just to say that, then you could always go to back here and say.
That's right.
This is just kind of a dictionary of what this is saying.
Correct. I mean, this is the,
Is that right, or, you know what I'm,
this is the state document. And that's been approved by the state, statewide.
and I don't like going by
And,
what state.
and we're just saying for our service area, we like this document, and then we put in additional things in our statement.
Is it true then that, like some of this stuff, your insurance, if you're not, say that you, if we put this in and you had it, your insurance will help you better by saying, because then you can go say, see what's in here, and you should have done this? Is that kind of jumping way out there? Or?
Yeah, I don't know what it, because that's then
I
you're
guess-
starting to talk about existing lots and existing houses and developments.
I just worry about the state getting their hands in there, because they like to, you know.
Right, by making a new subdivision follow these standards doesn't make the entire district have another fire rating.
No,
But within a district, you can have multiple fire ratings.
okay.
Our area, we have some areas that we can't get to in 5 road miles. So those are classed as 10s, meaning no fire protection, even though they're within a fire service area.
Yeah.
But you can have structures within a fire service area that can actually have quite low standard. My example would probably be Discovery Basin. It's a sprinkled property. It's probably singled out and has a much lower rate than anyone else in the county. So could a subdivision with these higher flow standards have a lower class rating? It's possible. It's possible.
And usually the way this, I mean, if this came up, if these were adopted and this came up, a subdivision came up there, 2 things are gonna happen. We're gonna require the fire department to send us a letter saying that the developer has complied with all of the regulations. So we, the county, are not gonna go out there and check it. The second thing we do is we require the developer's engineer to send us documentation saying it was put in and it was put in accordance with these regulations.
they're gonna read these regulations and say we can't comply, we're not gonna build it.
That's their choice, I mean,
That's why I was hoping that the planning board would chime in.
the planning board has never really dictated to the fire departments what they do. Valley Fire has half a page fire requirements, and it's like, that's fine. These guys have, Georgetown Lake has always had 12 pages worth of stuff, and it's like, that's fine. It's each department is gonna, and that's why all we do is say, you send us a letter saying they met the requirements. We don't wanna delve in your requirements. Valley's pretty much say you pay a fee, that's the end of the story. But it really comes down to how involved does the fire department want to be in new subdivisions. Valley doesn't really want to be too involved, they just want to collect the fee to put towards the fire department itself and equipment. And they feel that that's the best use of it, and, you know, Georgetown Lake has always, kind of leaned more towards having water sources and having developers put in water sources. I mean, if you remember South Jericho Bay, they were gonna have an entire hydrant system. So they were gonna have fire hydrants, just like the town has fire hydrants. So really comes down to how involved the fire departments want to be.
Okay, so before I call for a vote, I'm gonna ask one more
We don't do
question.
it yet. We're gonna read
Was this
the,
discussion?
resolution here. This is just discussion. We're gonna read the resolution, this afternoon, first reading, and then next week will be the.
Okay. So I have one more question. Mike, do you remember why the board turned down these added regulations before the commission?
The DNRC ones,
Yeah, do you remember?
yeah, they didn't want that much regulation across the whole county.
For the whole county, but this is just for the Georgetown Lake Fire Service area.
Okay.
And I have to agree, you guys have put in a lot of time in putting this thing together, and I have to agree with you.
Well, I guess I would offer also, if there's something like a sprinkler option that you don't want, we can write that out of our reg. We don't,
That's just an example.
Yeah.
Those bunches. Go ahead.
Maybe another option is for, you know, I mean, because this isn't gonna get adopted today, so
No.
maybe you have actually taken the bits that you want to really highlight and put them in your document. So maybe that's what it comes down to. Maybe you just need to look at the rest of DNRC's document and really scoop out what you really want and stick it into the document. And then really look at the document of, well, if this document stood alone, would it work?
we actually discussed doing that. I mean, there's pros and cons to doing that. There is a big advantage to sticking with the state document as a whole, because it's adopted by other counties. It's a statewide document. So our position was we didn't want to
Cut
take
it out
parts
and
of that
piece it.
document and embed it in ours. And when the state updates, you have a more difficult time. So we did look at that option. And after discussion with DNRC and getting some feedback, this document was actually set up to become a requirement document. That's the state's preferred way to do this. Doesn't mean we have to do it, but we just thought it was more advantageous and easier to follow in the future if we kept them separate.
Are you kind of just, are you worried about the regulations, just that there's too many regulations?
Well, and then they're dictated by the state, and then, how do we get into all these regulations, right? And it's like, geez, there's no personal responsibility anymore. And
Well, obviously, there ain't good look where it's fit, you know, I mean, it's, you guys can argue that either way.
well,
and
okay,
I'm
so
not-
here's,
I just-
so here's an example, when the state upgrades theirs, they're gonna say, oh, you gotta upgrade ours. And so this thing gets, it'll weigh 5 pounds in 10 years, And I'm just like, I'm over it, you know what I mean? I mean, I don't want, you know, we have road requirements, and we have, you know, you have to build a bridge, you get a fire truck there, I got that whole, you know. But geez, at some point, there'll be so many regulations, nobody will be able to develop it. I'm over it. And you know, and I can sit there and say in my personal life that this isn't fair to Americans, but you know what, in my professional life, if I don't follow through with my own feelings, I mean, you guys vote for it, but I'm telling you right now, I know, but if I had to, I'm not gonna, not me, not today, not that I have to. You know, you can overrule me, that's great, and I will have no hard feelings, and I'll help you enforce it. But right now, I know, right now, I'm just gonna be real clear. Here we go again, you know, you wrote a good document, guys, no kidding. I mean, I think, and I'm not an expert, but I'm in public safety my whole life. But, you know, you gotta add the state's crap, and let's add, you know, and when they change theirs, you're gonna change yours, here we go. And it's just the way it goes. I think, you know, as usual, Linda's pretty productive, fooling through this stuff, and if you wanna redo this document with the stuff that you absolutely have to have and no more, I take another look at it, and I may vote for it, but I'm not gonna vote for it with this appendix. So, that's just my thought, we're not voting today, I may change my mind, but that's it.
I don't understand state law, but it seemed like this document with this established date would be our benchmark. Yes, the state can amend and adopt, but we wouldn't necessarily just be joined at the hip with the state.
Yeah, but you may not be here, that's exactly what will happen. They'll come
I
and
won't
say,
be here, maybe.
You may not be here, but you know, we've upgraded the document, we knew you'd adopt ours so you can adopt our changes. What we're doing right now is the same thing, we're adopting your changes. But hey, it's no big deal, it ain't personal, it's just business, I'm not voting for it. But you guys might, and that's fine, good for you, this is discussion time, so now you got how I feel.
You know, the other thing is that this is sort of a new thing with the fire department wanting their regulations to go into the subdivision regulations. They've always just kept them separate, and that's why we've never really concurred too much with what they wanted, because it's like, it's your separate document, your thing. I guess, how does that weigh in here? If they just want to say, okay, well, we're going to adopt what we want, and we're going to leave it out of the subdivision regulations, and our subdivision regulations will just continue to say, you have to comply with the regulations required by the fire department, and they adopt what they want. I mean, they could still end up adopting that whole thing. It's just, it wouldn't be in our regulations at that point. It would be in their stuff.
Just yours.
It's not independent of the county commissioners, could they?
Where it comes into play with the county commissioners is when a developer comes in and says, well, I want to develop, and you know, I've complied with everything except for this piece of their regulations, and they won't let me, they won't give me the letter, then that's where you guys now have to weigh in as to whether you're going to override the fire department.
That's what you're worried about, other regulations.
Then we wouldn't be able to do it if we just said.
If they're in our regulations,
Yep.
they'd have to go get a variance
Yep.
from the commissioners. If they're not in our regulations, you can just override it and
Yep.
say,
That's what I thought.
That's,
So with a guy who you think maybe then that would wait till they came in with something to say, instead of getting that state, having the state record,
Yep.
all that, then they could come in and
The
say,
power
hey,
would remain with the commission. And I wouldn't be here either, maybe, but that's fine. I don't want to take away power from the commission.
so you kind of have a couple choices, it looks like, to go forward. You can proceed forward with what you have and see how the vote pans out. You can scoop out of the DNRC document what you really think you need, put it into your document, bring it forward, see how that pans out. Or you can adopt your own regulations, knowing that the commission could override at some point. And, you know, then you don't have to come to them to get approval, you just adopt your regulations. So those are sort of your three things now that you guys are gonna have to go back to your fire department and
Talk about,
talk about.
okay?
Okay, we're gonna be on the agenda for next time, right?
I guess
Resolution.
Well, we
with
gotta-
it up in the air this much, I think you should table that first resolution
Well,
reading.
okay, well, I don't know if it's up in the air, but the other two commissioners didn't get a chance to speak yet.
Well, I have to agree, I think they put in a lot of time and effort and made it as simple as they possibly could and tried to cover all the bases. And I'm comfortable with the document, I truly am.
Well, yeah,
Move forward
I'm
then.
just earwash right now, but really, fires are put out with water. And you can read our document, and the bulk of it is related to water and access. That's the big thing. And the document we have now is not working. Developers are putting in these 1,000-gallon tanks. Excuse me, but there's septic tanks that are that size. That doesn't do us any good. I wish that stuff would go away. This would be the document that I'd hope would change that.
The homeowners at the old lodge area, their cisterns, each one of them, each home has a cistern, and they are right at the corner of the house. If that house is burning, you ain't gonna draw the water out of that cistern.
Yeah,
You're gonna go to the neighbors and draw water out of it. That was the dumbest thing that developer ever did. You should have put a tank up on the hill.
or one central tank, which we
That's what I
kind of
mean,
head towards.
one central
Yeah.
tank,
Yeah, where everybody gets the benefit.
where you can get to.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
agree, totally, I don't like much more regulations either. I guess we still have time.
Yeah, anytime, sure.
Well, I don't like being told what to do either. The people need to be different if they all comply and do what they're supposed to, but where we don't have nothing, we try to ask them to and they don't, and then shit, catch a fire and burns down the whole neighborhood, and then come back on us too,
Big part of the state document is stuff that's on the TV and handouts every year, telling you how far you should clear around your property and how you should prepare it. People don't do that. They expect government to do it. We've just
Fire
suddenly
Save Montana came from that regulation right there.
That's exactly it. So that's why we adopted this, saying, before anybody builds, let's clear that site. Because that's the only time we're gonna have a hand in this, unless the HOA has any backbone. HOAs are just a document for the clerk and recorder.
I think we're still all hard on this, right?
We got time. I
Yeah.
think that
There
was,
ain't no motion to make it nothing today.
No.
You got a few different things, you just keep us posted, I think. And that's-
So you'll do your first reading and I guess second reading is planned for next week or?
Yes, it would be.
this is basically the first reading.
Okay.
First
Well,
reading
first reading
this afternoon.
Yeah, so, yep.
Okay, so
So this isn't the first reading right now.
this is the
No.
public
Oh.
hearing.
It's actually.
This is
the
just
public
discussion
hearing.
and you sharing with us.
Okay.
First reading is at 1 o'clock.
Oh,
That
I
way we
see.
can discuss it and have it.
Gotcha.
I thought maybe some of the public could come in.
You bet.
You have something for me?
No, it's on my kitchen table. Tomorrow morning?
No, Thursday morning.
Okay.
Any other comments on the regulations? Let's see, what do we call it? Proposed amendments to Granite County Subdivision regulations and amendments to the fire safety requirements for Georgetown Lake area, service area. Anybody else? Okay, thanks guys. Thanks for your hard work. I agree with that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kurt.
Yep.